shapes, and he's freaking out. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
he went back to the doctor this morning, and basically the doctor said, um, you know, it because they cut back the prescription in that one because Rich's eyes are real sensitive, so I think they cut it back too much. So now he can't see out of it. And then he's got cataracts on his left, so he's having a horrible time. And now they're going to wait a couple months. They want him to wait a couple months to get the left one done, or to figure out what to do with that one.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Isn't that terrible?
Yep.
He can't even see his phone. He can't see the TV.
Wow.
Oh, I'm
Even with his glasses on.
He doesn't wear glasses typically to do those things. Like, he wears glasses to drive, but that's it. So now he like doesn't have glasses that are helping him. So they gave him temporary ones, but he doesn't know what they're gonna do. It's horrible.
That is horrible.
Oh. With your eyes, I can't even.
All we got to do now, the way we're going, is go to socialized medicine, and who knows what you'll get.
Mm.
God, now when I got sick in London, I waited till I got home to come to the doctor because as I'm watching the news over there, when I was over there were all these lawsuits going on, suing health clinics and stuff and doctors, and I'm like, okay. I was so sick, but I'm like, I'm waiting until I get home.
What'd you have?
I had,
Like a flu?
no, I had poisoning. I had, what is that? Real bad food poisoning? It's not food poisoning, it's
Like
something else.
salmonella?
Oh, I was sick for 3 months.
Oh my goodness
How'd
gracious.
you get home?
Yeah.
I covered my
Tough to
face.
handle.
I mean, it was awful. I was throwing up and had a fever, and it was
Oh,
terrible.
that's miserable.
But I can't remember the name of it. You would know it as soon as I said it.
Cholera,
Huh?
typhoid,
No, God.
dysentery,
Typhoid salad.
Dengue
Typhoid
fever.
Dysentery.
Yeah.
Ebola.
Ebola, right? But it was terrible. I was on antibiotics for 3 months.
Oh,
Couldn't
Yeah, I
get
know.
rid of it.
that's a hell
Throw
of a
out
thing
your
to
dead.
have. Antibiotics for 3 months.
Mhm. I think we're supposed to start.
For the first time in my life, I've been going to the because my shoulders were stiff and my and I just need a little bit of massage and loosen them up. Then I can move my neck. It's no big deal. So I went to the massage person. Okay. You're supposed to be a chiropractor because your spine is sorry. I don't like the idea of a crack.
Yeah, don't even. We always call it bone fracture. You looked at the bone fracture.
So, she called them bone crackers?
I
It's
did.
not nice. But I was wrong.
Okay, you
I
ready?
think the profession has changed since
Yeah.
I formed an impression of it. Anyhow,
I want to see how the conversation goes.
Yeah, I think a lot more people use them now than before.
I'm going to tell you my story because who knew?
Yep. Jenny, yep.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the budget meeting for September 16th, 2024 of the Middletown Borough Council. If you could rise, the pledge, and then remain standing for a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Grace, call the roll.
Here.
Ms. Miller, or, excuse me, Ms. Reed,
Here.
Ms. Willenbecker,
Here.
and Ms. Miller.
Here.
Mr. District is coming later, as is Ms. Lloyd and Mr. Reddinger is not.
Yeah, they'll both be here shortly. Is there any public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, the first item is the proposed budget for highway.
Can I just say something really quickly?
Sure.
So the budget books are set up a little differently this year. I set them up by fund and then by department. So if you look, the first tab is for the general fund, and then the electric fund is behind it. So if you go to general fund public works, those are all of the department budgets that Matt will be talking about. Yes. And when you go to Greg, it will be everything behind the electric fund tab.
Okay.
And do we want to give a general statement about the proposed budget being the revenue and expense being balanced?
Yeah, for both funds, the electric and general fund, based on the input from managers, on both revenue and expenses, we're at a balanced budget for the general fund with a balance of $261.02, and a balanced budget in electric fund to the negative $2,010.18.
With no, at this time, no anticipation of any tax increases for the general fund. However, that's contingent upon the results of a negotiated police contract, which we're in the middle of. We did some estimation of what it might settle at, but, you know, if we go to arbitration, it settles for higher, then we'll have to make some budget adjustment at that time. And the caveat you'll hear later when the electric department supervisor speaks is some information we received from the PJM from the sale of, or I should say the auction for electric capacity for 2025 is scheduled, the costs are scheduled to change. So he'll get into more detail about that, but it's really a pass-through cost that we will, that we get now from the grid, you know, the wholesaler, and that every couple of years they go out to auction and they bid that out, and the prices came in a lot higher for 25 and 26. So Greg will talk about that in detail with this benefit. But it was balanced before we knew that. In order to make it balanced into 2025, we're going to have to account for that change in the capacity costs.
And then the last few pieces of information is across the board, we did a 3% payroll increase, a 6% benefit increase, and a 6% insurance increase going into 2025.
Are we looking at public works?
Matt?
Thank you. Probably the easiest way may be to start with the kind of summary that I had handed out a little bit ago. That kind of, hi Angie.
Hi, Angie.
I can wait till you get settled quick. We just started. No, you're good.
So he's looking at this.
What page are you on?
We just started and we're going to talk about this sheet that I just handed out. Yep. You now are up to speed with everyone. I worked on this a little bit today to get this finalized. For the 24 highway budget forecast, pretty much we're falling right in line with year-to-date so far. Two items that were over a little bit was traffic signal maintenance. Right now it's 14% over budget, which is approximately $3,500. We had a few outages and we ended up having to replace pretty much all of the backup batteries that we have for the uninterrupted power supplies. All of our signals have a UPS on them so that they'll run during an outage. Unfortunately, most of them were installed at the same time and the batteries have all decided to die at the same time. So that was kind of a one-off expense that hopefully we won't see for another 4, 5, 6 years. We added one, there's a new item that we paid for this year. Worked with Sally, we added a new budget line item for it for waste oils. Through the course of maintaining the vehicles and equipment, we end up with used oils, and we, have to pay to get rid of those. So I added, $750 in the 2025 budget. I believe what we paid this year was 675, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's not a huge expense, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we have that called out in the budget. Moving on to 2025, the projected budget. Kind of going down through the expenses, I have the following increases and decreases. 01430-190, we have a significant decrease of approximately $5,600. I reached out to one of our insurers, and they can provide the trainings that I was looking for free, rather than having to pay for the training. So I will get those scheduled and have staff go through all those. 430-231, there's a $2,000 decrease in vehicle fuel. The past few years, I'm comfortable with what we've put in for 2025. Obviously, if we would get a huge snowstorm every other week, our fuel usage goes up, but I think we're in really good shape with all that. It's not like it's on the edge. For 430-315, we created a new line item for participation into the REP program. I know Borough Manager has talked about the REP program a bunch of times here over 2024, and our service level fee to be included in the REP program is around $14,000. So we created a line item for that, and that will be a line item that at this point is anticipated to be in future budgets for the unknown future. Whether the number will change, but it's probably going to be a thing. I did pare down engineering a little bit. I deducted $5,400 off of that based on a couple of the past years where we ended up year to date. One kind of thing to go along with that is we would have to keep that in mind if throughout the year numerous requests such as traffic studies or things like that come up that may not have necessarily been planned for. We may have to look at the budget at that time when it's discussed and go from there. We did a decrease in 430-374 of equipment repairs of $7,500. Basically, it's a decrease out of this line item. What we did, I think, for 2024, I worked with Sally and we created the Woody Waste site and equipment having its own section of the budget. So we can actually see the operating costs for that facility. So essentially that money was just moved from one to the other, but it accounts for it more cleanly. Under 430, we're not really sure what it'll work out to be when Sally finally gets the last three digits of the coding. It's 430XXX. There's a new expense for a vehicle lease. The expense is $9,600 for the public works superintendent. I'm not really sure which thing I want to go with yet. I'm going to be as cost effective as possible, and it will be obviously brought before council before anything would be decided on. We revised 01430-740, which was one of the capital expenses. I'd like to kind of go through this and then we can look at the capital pages, unless you want to flip back and forth. The 01430-740 that was in your packet had $15,000 for a DEP grant match to replace the Woody Waste dump truck. In speaking with Scott, our mechanic, he's pretty confident that we should be able to get at least 2 more years out of that truck. So I'm eliminating that $15,000 off of the capital expense. That truck is purchased with a DEP 9010 grant. So whatever the truck would cost in 2 or 3 years, if we go for the DEP grant, they'll pay 90. We would just have to get the 10. That's where the 15 grand came from. Right now the truck's 150,000. 15 was our 10%. But we will be able to make that truck last a couple more years here. Under 01438-250, we put in an increase of $91,000 to provide for replacing the downtown pavers with a patterned material. The $91,000 isn't only for the pavers, it actually had some other patching and stuff in there. But I would say 80 to 85,000 of that is the pavers downtown. Alternately, I estimate we could place regular asphalt and stripe with piano keys for around $16,000.
Are they the street pavers that
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yeah, the ones in the crosswalks.
Okay.
Yes. That's, the 91 is currently in there. I can't you the $91,000 for replacing those. It would look pretty, but, the 91 is in there. However, council decides to go with that, it's fine. But I did some quick math and we could do it for a lot less.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm sorry, Matt, when you say we could do it for a lot less, it's not pavers, it's,
we would put in regular asphalt like the street, and then
Right.
we would do the piano key crosswalks, like what is on Main Street, the very large ones that stand out, so you can tell there's a crosswalk there.
right,
Kind of like how they did when they tore the pavers out in the middle of the street down here. It would just be regular asphalt put back in like that on the crosswalks, and then we would do the piano keys. Putting anything in there that looks, I mean, the one thing that I'd gotten a price for, Penn State Health has them all over their facilities. It's called Adaprint, and it's a really nice, neat-looking material, but it is expensive. And there are territories, so you really can't get competition on it because of the type of material and the licensing that they have.
Do you understand what he's talking?
oh, yeah, I completely understand, I was just, it's like, it will look beautiful like it does now, or it will look like a regular crosswalk. And with all of the attention to the downtown, streetscape program, I understand 91 is a big number. I'm just trying to process that it will lose some of its feeling of the streetscape project if we go back to striping it. Yeah,
I'm open
yeah,
to,
I know, you're just presenting us, I'm just gathering in what you're saying, yeah. I'm not challenging you, I'm just processing,
Sure.
yeah.
no problem. Questions are good. I like questions.
So the 91 is a replacement for something that is more aesthetically pleasing,
Yes,
not just asphalt with paint.
correct.
Yeah,
And this number's included in the budget that's already balanced.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I was just putting an alternative out there in case, however, everything else shook through
Right.
in the budget. That's the only reason. Yeah, if anyone's been to any of the Penn State Health facilities, they use a brick pattern, and it's red and it's sparkly. I think it has recycled glass in it, so it sparkles, and it's very long lasting. It's a product that is like a hybrid between asphalt and concrete. Stamped pavement won't last long because pavement's flexible. It'll warm up and it'll slowly melt, and it'll kind of get yucky. They did that in Anvil a number of years
Right.
ago,
That's right.
and it just kind of gets wonky looking.
When you got the estimate for that, did you ask that with 1,000% certainty those type of pavers are meant for vehicular traffic? Because the ones that were downtown,
They're not.
well, I'll go back to when I was first elected. This was a major topic of discussion, and I didn't want them in there. And then it was over the years later, we found out that they even told the current council president, this is not for you to drive on. We put them in anyway. Do we know that the stuff you're talking about from Penn State Health can be driven on?
Yeah, it's actually not pavers. It's
Yeah.
it's
Like a rubber mat. that
well, it
they
kind of looks
seal
like
on
it kind of looks like concrete when you put it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like asphalt. It's more like concrete, and then it cures to a harder material than what asphalt is. It's only about an inch thick.
Right.
And then they stamp it while it's still almost like doing concrete, but it's not concrete.
Yeah.
It's called Adaprint.
I've never
Yeah,
seen it.
I've seen it. I go over to.
Yeah.
Is it nice?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is.
Matt, do you have a sense of the lifetime, number of years, once it's installed before it needs to be replaced?
Councilperson Lloyd just asked for some photos. I will be glad to pull together some lifespan, find out from places that have it,
It's,
I
what
don't
their
know.
experience has
If
been.
91 is annualized over 30 years, I don't know.
Right.
Any issues with plows or anything like that?
where they run the plows over it, where.
Oh,
Where did you see it?
Well,
I've never seen this
I
stuff.
go over to Penn State. That's
Okay.
where all my doctors are, and I've seen them run over it a lot, and
Okay.
doesn't pick it up. I
Yeah,
can guarantee you that.
They have the pattern, but it isn't like the pavers when they get kind of out of sorts.
Yep.
It's a flat pattern all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will grab some pics and,
thank you, Matt.
Absolutely.
But the other alternative is you can put concrete down and stamp it.
I've seen that. I think,
and put a color to it,
yeah.
you know. That's the other, am I right, Matt?
Yeah, the concrete, it will crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will crack, that's the other thing.
And you would definitely want to get your concrete, you want the color mixed in with the concrete rather than a stain on top.
Yep.
Right,
Because as the surface slowly breaks off over time, then you'll end up with just the bare concrete underneath. And they can dye it, it's just a couple extra bucks. But, yeah, there
But
are
it-
some options there.
But there are two kinds of concrete, right?
One that cracks and one that will crack, or
There
has
we-
cracked and will crack.
Yep, that's exactly.
And they're followed by the concrete guarantee. If I'm on your concrete, I warranty it.
It's followed by a guarantee.
I put concrete down in '98 and it's still, in my backyard, and it's still holding up.
Oh, well, you're lucky.
Hey?
Yeah, that's good.
Will you do our pavers for us?
Huh?
Do we still have the pavers from downtown?
Yes.
We have a very large supply of what I'm led to understand were pavers for the sidewalks.
Yep.
There's a lot of those there. As far as the street pavers, they're actually like 5/8 of an inch thicker than the sidewalk ones, and we're almost out of ones to replace. So something has to be done downtown in fiscal year 25.
Yeah,
have-
'cause I see them every day when I walk the dog.
And your 91, that's not just,
The last quote I had gotten from them was 2023, and I believe at the time it was 78 to 80,000. So,
so it would be down here, and isn't there the crosswalk over on,
there's
like,
60.
yeah, so that's all of them, right?
Oh,
Yep.
Okay,
okay.
so it's not just the
Yeah.
little,
It's
No.
a lot.
it's all the crosswalks too
Yes.
that have those?
Yep.
Okay.
That seems like a
The
no-brainer.
quote it was $50 a square foot was what they had quoted me in 2023.
Now, would that, like down here where the sidewalk goes up, with the little rounded, you know, they're in there too, right?
It'll be from the curb out.
Okay, not on the actual.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll just be within the
Where the
two
pavers are.
curbs. Yes.
Mm.
Yep. The next item, capital under buildings, 01409-730. That has the detail. It's $105,000 in there for capital for buildings, which consists of replacement of one rooftop HVAC unit here at Borough Hall. In working with our vendor, we're starting to see that the units are requiring more repairs. They're getting to the end of their lives. So what I would like to do before we crash and burn would be to work on replacing one of these hopefully every year or every other year so that we can keep up with it before we have a tremendous amount of maintenance expenses. Carryover of the Borough Hall window replacement and exterior painting. Both of those projects will trigger prevailing wage requirements, and the windows require a lead abatement contractor. I've reached out to HRG and I'm working with Josh regarding wading through the whole prevailing wage issue. The window replacement and exterior painting, the carryover was $40,000. That will do the painting, and the windows are probably gonna be a separate thing once we get that figured out. The windows are gonna be expensive because of the size of them for the building. I would love to keep the look of them, but we probably can't keep the total look of what we have, but because of the size, they're going to be costly. So that's something else that will be coming up. I'm also carrying over the Public Works roof coating. I didn't put that on there. It was $25,000. I received one estimate on that. It triggered prevailing wage. I created specs with Grace's help, and I'm going to send that out to a multitude of vendors and see if we can get that down below the $25,000 threshold. If I do that, I will do my best to get that done here in 2024, and then we don't have to carry that money over at all. Main Street Gym, we need to install a new generator and a transfer switch for the emergency lighting. It doesn't have to be a very large one. I used half of the size of the one for the police department that was recently installed. I estimate a cost of $15,000 for the generator and the transfer switch at the Main Street Gym. Any questions on the building ones so far? For capital equipment, 01430-740. I'd like to replace truck 4, which is a 2006 Ford F-550 dump truck. Most of the cash on the detail sheet, it spells all this out. Most of the cash would come from selling unused and or already replaced equipment. The remainder of it would come out of the equipment sinking fund that was established. It's going on 20 years old. The truck has a 6.0 liter engine, which was a really bad design from Ford. It's getting to the point we're going to have to probably drop significant thousands of dollars into it for maintenance. And I think now would be the best time to rid ourselves of it and get something that's going to be more dependable for another 20 years. To help offset the cost of that, we will take the plow and the spreader off of Ford before we sell it, and we will be able to utilize those on the new truck. So that's about $15,000 that we wouldn't have to come up with. Yes,
I
ma'am.
have one quick question. Back to the Capitol building, so the HVAC system and the generator, those are new items, but the other two are items you wanna carry
Yes,
over, okay.
you are correct, yes.
Did you say you were gonna take the spreader off of this one, off
Mhm.
the truck? Okay.
Yep.
And the plow?
Yep.
Okay. Is it a two-way plow or just,
That one has a
One way.
V on it.
it's a V?
Mhm.
Okay.
We don't wanna be there.
Under the Capitol Buildings and Grounds, this was put in, because I didn't really know where this was going. Replacement basketball court due to the Oak Hill substation, $20,000. I'm requesting carryover of the steel door replacements for the Hoffer Main Pavilion. That project, when I added the numbers up, is about $52,000 to replace the steel doors, which triggers the prevailing wage and goes through all that stuff again.
So when you give that estimate where it's triggering the prevailing wage, is that included in that amount, or would the prevailing wage be in addition to that, or you don't really know yet?
No, if, as an example, if the doors down there are 50,000, it'll tweak it a little bit, because just the way prevailing wage is, but what I'm working with HRG and doing is not having to get the engineer involved to do a whole big thing, because we'll just spend a lot on that. So it's just how I work the bid to get it out to the contractors. They have to know ahead of time, they have to pay prevailing wage. They'll bid it with those wages and benefits in their price, and then I just have to certify their payroll
Okay.
once the project is done. I'd like to carry over, there was $25,000 in there for crack seal and seal coating and striping of the parking lots and the paths at Hoffer Park. Looking at the parking lot over this summer, we're gonna have to do some pavement repair in there before we do a crack seal and a seal coat over top of it. So I'm gonna work with staff. I request that $25,000 be carried over. We will do the necessary asphalt repairs, and then we'll have a good surface to go for the seal coating. Fry Park, Sally and I talked about this. We put in, this would be a new, this is not a carryover. This is $50,000 gaming grant supplement in case we do not receive the full requested grant amount. Fingers crossed, we'll get the entire thing. That $50,000 then doesn't need to be expensed. But we just wanted to make sure we had a buffer in there so that we could complete the project in the event we don't get full funding. And then in Fry Park, there was talk potentially of a pavilion for down at Fry Park, and I looked at one that was similar to the size of the one that is at Oak Hills, and that worked out to be about $50,000. That would be a new request. Also, if a pavilion is not placed out there, then that money would not have to be expended either.
So
Matt,
let's say we decide not to put a pavilion out there, can that 50,000 be spent on something else, park related, or in another park, or it just comes back at the end of the year?
I guess that would be a decision for council, and
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this budget process is for you to kind of think about what's in the budget, what you don't want in the budget, and if you want it allocated to another
Somewhere else.
place, we would do that before we finalize the budget.
I would say if we're gonna spend $50,000 out there, I'd like to see more, playground equipment. If we're gonna spend $50,000, I don't wanna see $50,000 spent on a pavilion. I'm sorry.
I'm not in favor of,
I'm-
I don't
I
even know if
thought
I
we-
agree with a
yeah,
pavilion,
and
period, let alone a $50,000 pavilion down there.
I know we had talked about because we had looked at DCNR's grants, and they do have, I think they're called neighborhood park grants.
Mhm.
They're for
Right.
smaller projects, smaller amounts of money. They do have different pot of money for larger park projects. And, the idea may be to fund the pavilion that way by seeking a DCNR grant.
Right, one of
Is
the
that
things
still the
kinda
thinking?
muddied the water with that is the casino grant had a relatively early deadline. The DCNR grants typically don't have a submission deadline until
The spring?
early spring, usually March, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's kind of a, when I was talking to Josh today, it'd be nice if they all just had the same opening and closing date. And you
Yeah,
could
I
just
mean-
do it all.
The gaming grant will be announced, I think, April 3rd, and the close date for grant applications for DCNR is April 4th.
But I'm not understanding why that would prevent, just because the timing's off, doesn't mean.
Well, we might not be able to do it for next year, but we could do it for 2026, perhaps.
Right, and so the pavilion might not go in when the playground does,
Right.
because we're still looking for funding, but when the funding comes through, then the pavilion goes in. Is that another way to look at it?
Yes.
And even with the casino grant, the gaming grant, excuse me, there is much more equipment than what is currently out there. We added a number of things compared to what's existing. But that's, that can be a council decision for how you wanna steer that park once we get with the gaming money and, move forward from there. I just wanted to put things in that
Right.
I know had been talked about,
Mm-hmm.
so at least there's kind of a place in the budget in case it comes to fruition at some point. Down under capital for the library, which is 01-456-730. The detail's $110,000. That consists of exterior painting, lead paint abatement. We'll try to get this work done in 2024. So far that won't trigger prevailing wage. In case I can't get it done, I would request a carryover of $20,000. The front window replacement, I'd like to carry over the funds, just not sure of what direction council and the library folks would like to see versus cost of various options, with that.
What's wrong with the windows?
They're totally rotten. They were
Mhm.
just
Are we
made-
talking about the ones that,
the really big one,
like where the door used to be,
yes. Yeah, you can poke your finger in the wood.
at the bottom?
A lot of it is pretty rough. It pretty much needs replaced.
You're gonna have to
I
build a new window, or?
think we need to.
That's, ideally, it would be nice to build something that is,
Yeah.
weather resistant, more so than just
I know.
pine.
Mhm.
The price that I had gotten with the folks that I was working with, this was the large window where the doors were and the two side lights alongside of it. And depending on where this would all wash out with particular options and different things, it was $85,000 to $100,000 for those windows. And I don't know how far we want to invest into the library. There may be some different things coming up with the library that it may go to Fink. There's a couple different things on the table of, how much we want to put in that particular facility. The window's beautiful, but it won't look like that. It won't be that detailed.
What was the thing about Fink?
The school district is keeping Fink
Okay,
when they move, and I believe Mara's looking at moving his things down there, and there's already a library at Fink, there's parking at Fink. I
Fair
think,
enough.
Heidi's kind of seeing what different options are for the future.
she's possibly interested in, what we're basically saying is she's possibly interested in moving the location of that library?
I think I don't know if she's committed one way or another. I think it's a point of discussion, because the library is a 130-year-old building. There was talk about carpets and a bunch of interior upgrades to it, and, the parking is an issue here. I think it's still like at a 30,000-foot level.
Yep.
But it is something to think about if, we would go with replacing the window with what, and I can have the detail. I can send out to everybody what the window would look like that was planned. But it's an expensive window. I'd have to bid that as well. So there'll be other extraneous costs with that.
Will
Matt, didn't
either
you-
one of these last another year? Like, does the window have to be replaced next year? I mean, I know it's in bad shape.
A decision, I mean, I think they're talking, the school district was hoping for 2026 to have their grand complex opening out there. I'm not sure if that's still on par. Staff could go up, we could probably remove most of the rotted wood that we can without loosening the panes. We can probably put some plastic wood in there to buy us some time and repaint it white. That's totally just a Band-Aid.
Well, 'cause the reason I'm asking is if there's a chance that they're gonna move out of that building and at some point we wanna sell that building, do we really wanna put $100,000 into it?
And like I said, I don't know, that's, the whole thing is just kind of meshing together now that the school isn't gonna get rid of Fink. There's different
I
opportunities.
don't think we need to keep going down that trail. What I wanna make sure council's aware of is that these are things that are, what he's telling you are needed to be done if you're gonna keep the buildings. And if for some reason this project doesn't happen in 2025, like building sells, we decide it can last another year, you have other things that aren't in here, like the Riverfront Park, whatever's gonna go where the pool is. I would envision these things, cause your budget's balanced as it is now, even with these
Right.
things in there. These would, I think you would have them just fall to the next park project, would be a good way to look at that. The
It
other-
could be transferred to the next project.
Yes. You could vote that way, that if these aren't done, that we're gonna transport these funds into the next park project, which may be, we're looking at what we're calling the Swider Creek Park, where the pool is, that area. And then Matt's got some detail now and an estimate from HRG on a walking path for Susquehanna Street. That's like a $300,000 project that if we get a grant for that, we'd need a 50% match. So, I think you'd be more pressed to come up with a solution now if we were looking at, hey, we don't have the money, we wanna do these, but we're not asking you to raise taxes. The budget that we're presenting with these things in it is balanced. So if something comes up, even like in the next 2 months on police negotiations, and we find, hey, we didn't budget enough on that line item into the general fund, we may have to say, okay, one of these projects gets put off because we need to put that money toward the police budget.
Sounds to me like they can be just fine with their team.
Excuse me. The bottom one there would be masonry repairs and repointing. Again, the building is not in danger of falling down. A fair number of the building does need, the exterior bricks repointed and so forth. And I had received an estimate of that from, a contractor, and it was about $39,000. That was beginning of 2024, so $40,000 is probably a realistic estimate for that. Those are the big items for my budget. How would you like to proceed, or do you have any questions for me? Please look at it. If you do have any questions, please reach out, and I'll be glad to answer anything.
Your steel doors are gonna be $50,000 or 52? Is that, how much are the doors themselves gonna be?
They have to remove all the frames. It's taken everything down to the masonry, and all the frames are severely corroded because they're usually hollow and water got in them after 2011,
Yeah,
and it just slowly ate them from the
They're
inside out.
Steel frames, right?
Yes,
Right.
they're steel frame into the masonry. It's a total redo.
and then that's including the bathrooms on the inside, on the interior and stuff?
Yes, there's, I believe, 20 doors when you actually sit and count them all up. There's
20
more,
doors.
There's more than you think. But it's expensive. A lot of the stuff we're seeing now that happened due to the flood.
Right,
Yes, ma'am.
That's at the main pavilion, right?
Yes.
right.
So, I was in there this summer, briefly, I mean, I didn't really look around a whole lot, but, so if we're putting new doors in, should we like maybe do some work inside to maybe make it a little bit nicer? Cause that's rented like every weekend, almost. Actually, I think it is pretty, I mean, that's constant, like, refund of deposits on the accounts receivable report all the time, so like, you know, I mean, I understand what you're saying about for the pavilion down there, but maybe we should look at taking some of those funds and doing something with that pavilion down there and making it a little bit nicer, cause if we're gonna put $50,000 doors in, you know, then we're committing to keeping that pavilion and not tearing it down.
One of the,
And it is kind of like outdated inside, I mean.
It's horrible.
Yeah, so could we look at, I mean, I don't know what we would want to do down there, but
Well, it's an odd shaped building.
I would rather see $50,000 put into that pavilion and hold off on Fry and make that, especially if we're putting new doors on.
But if you didn't do the pavilion and Fry, you just paid for the doors for Hoffer.
Well,
right.
yeah,
I mean, there's,
but I still think Hoffer needs, I'm not saying we need to spend that 50,000, but whatever, you know, like,
there's two different ways to go on Hoffer. It could be a new building that's open, like Shelter 1 and Shelter 2, that has a lot of less things. There's no plumbing, there's no winterizing it, there's a lot of that stuff. The other thing is whatever architect drew up the building, they use triangles everywhere, and triangles are terrible for usable space. The building, I think, when the fire marshal went through it, can only hold like 45 people. That's all it can hold based on the shape and the exit that there are to it. It's a building that has survived a significant flood. I believe we have blueprints for it. I believe it was built in 75, 76, so it's going on 50 years old without a lot of updates to it.
Right.
We have been working on the roof. We've been replacing with the roofer pieces of roof, you know, as we work our way around it. There's no doubt that the building could probably use a significant facelift. It just, as you noted, how much would council want to invest in a building that is still 50 years old? It's not really a great layout.
It's true, and yet the other point, and you know, for council to consider, to your point, is there's really no time frame that we're aware of now for replacing that building. It's on a list, but it's not anywhere at the top of the list. So while investing money might make sense, what might not make sense if we saw a 2-year or even a 3-year time frame for it, but we're not even looking at 2 or 3 years. So to invest some money so it doesn't look like what it looks like now inside feels to me like money we should well spent for the people who rent it every weekend.
It is
And the steel doors to make it safe inside so people aren't going inside when they shouldn't be. Feels like a really good skip step until we look at it holistically, yeah.
The break-in stopped after we arrested them.
imagine that.
Yeah,
That typically happens.
Yes.
Well, the thing is I feel like if you're gonna redo the building, it should be an enclosed building again, like it's always been.
I mean, I think, you know, a couple of us have walked around with HRG down there many moons ago, could have been almost a year ago now, and to upgrade the building and make it bright and cheery and have newer plumbing fixtures and really make it appealing, you're well into 6 figures.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's stuff is just,
Be cost effective just to spruce it up,
Yeah,
fix it up.
more cost effective to spruce
It's
it
a
up.
block building.
Yep.
Cement foundation.
Paint it, replace the bathroom,
Yeah.
the
Kitchen area.
bathrooms,
Elevate the electric boxes.
and,
Damaged by flood.
yeah.
Kitchen area is sad as well.
I mean, on one of the lights is marked on the ceiling. There was, it was up to the wooden beams in 2011 inside that building.
Really?
So, yes.
Oh, that's right, you showed me that.
Yeah,
So your new building there would be the same thing.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying it should stay a concrete structure the way it is now.
well, it's, yeah, I mean,
Given the, mhm.
that's where an open building is, nice, also power wash it out and move on. But yeah, people like the enclosed building as well.
Flood comes, you open the doors, right?
Yep. Yeah,
So
it's a shame
changing
that
the Fry Park Pavilion to the Huffer Park Pavilion?
that's entirely a
I
council
think we
decision.
I like it.
I like that idea.
Yep.
Yep,
What?
I do too.
Yeah.
Move the Fry Park Pavilion to the Hoffer Pavilion.
The money.
Mhm.
The money.
The 50,000
Oh.
in the budget.
We can change that on your detail, but we're not adding or subtracting
Right.
No.
anything,
Right.
so.
Yeah, it's just moving it around from one account to the other. I won't belabor it. Is there anything else specifically you wanted me to go over? Like I said, most of my things are stayed consistent. I went over the major changes on the detail sheet. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Staff
Thank
worked
you.
hard, I can say, Matt, Greg, Sally, everybody to bring this balanced general fund budget to you. And
Yeah.
I like it.
It's amazing.
Thanks, Matt. Oh.
I just want to say thank you for taking out that dump truck when the one where you said you could get another 2 years out of it. Because like it would have been just as easy just to get it. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah.
I want to be more diligent with some of the grant opportunities that we have. When we were doing the gaming grant, the county advised us that, or maybe someone had the information, we hadn't applied, I think, since 2014 or 2015, and there's pockets of money out there that we can tap into, like the DEP grant for that dump truck, we can apply every 2 years. And that doesn't mean we're gonna, get rid of a truck that's 4 years old because we can get a new one.
Right.
But it is a source to help us stretch the funds that we have and leverage them against other things that are out there.
Thank you, Matt.
You're very
Yep.
welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Madam President, can I say something? So, sorry, Greg, just 1 second. So, on some of this stuff, it seems like we're either not going to do it in one place and maybe move it somewhere else, like we just talked about. Maybe some of this library stuff's not going to happen. I should preface this whole thing by saying I think you all did an excellent job on this. And Sally, this is very organized and it's very easy to follow along with, so appreciate that. But what I was going to say was there's clearly going to be some things we're not going to do on some of these lists, and this budget is balanced even with them included.
Right.
I was able to touch base with a few of you just very recently about a couple of ideas that I want to mention, but I can't do it here. We'd have to do it in executive session. So I just, before we finalize anything and say, okay, well, we're not doing this, this, or this, because we want to move it here, I'd just like to at least say what the idea is back there. It's a legal issue, so we could think about that.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, I just don't want to say, oh, well, since we're not doing the library, we're going to use that money for this before I get a chance to tell you what I want to tell you back there.
All right.
We have a lot of things that are in need of some kind of attention.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of took a priority based on things that we've heard,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes those priorities change, and we, want the public to know that this isn't fluff. This is just shifting priorities.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Mhm.
And
Good point.
and this thing that I want to talk about is something that only just came up very recently, so they wouldn't even have known
All right.
about it.
Yeah, and technically there won't be anything removed, like I won't remove that 15,000 because it's part of the balanced budget.
Mm-hmm.
So of the things that we don't utilize, that's as council, would look at,
All right.
okay?
We just have a surplus then.
We'll
wait, 'cause
have
it-
whatever he's not gonna,
It
Yes.
says on here to eliminate it. So what does that mean?
we're not eliminating it. We'll just keep it here. I know,
Where are you at, Ange?
I'm looking at revising 430-740 to eliminate the 15,000 for DEP.
yeah, I'm not gonna eliminate it. Like I just said, it's part of the balanced budget. So it'll stay there for now.
Mm.
and that money can be utilized differently
Oh.
if you so choose.
Okay.
Or it'll drop to the bottom line next year.
Right,
Okay.
And the results of arbitration,
yeah.
if we go there,
Yeah.
could take that.
be moved over to the general fund then?
Well, yeah, the one thing I say we don't know as far as the general fund, this is a
Police.
contract year
Hmm.
for the police, collective
So
bargaining.
it could be moved over to
And
that.
that's not gonna be resolved, so having this in here gives us that ability to move that without having to open the budget in January
Mm.
to reopen.
Jim,
Yeah.
are you calling for an executive session after this?
If I can. I at least like to put the thought in people's minds, if I can.
Okay.
I won't take up your time, I know we wanna get out of here.
Alright.
Do we have to amend the agenda right now then, to say that?
Can report on it the next meeting, I don't know that it has to be on the agenda, cause we've had an in-between meetings already. We just have to
Yeah.
report on it at the next meeting.
Okay. Sorry, Greg.
Number 2 is electric. Greg?
Since electric, a big part of electric budget is the power purchase, power sales. I thought I would start the presentation, of the budget with what's going on. Ken kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what is actually going on, and I'll try and be brief, but I wanted to give you a quick overview of what's happening out there in the power supply world. We currently have a BP contract out to 2027. That contract is at a real premium rate, and we do load following, which means we got 5 years of electricity sales at one rate. It doesn't jump up and down with demand like contracts that we had in the past. But with that said, our bill is made up of 3 types of parts of the bill. One's your energy, which is RBP. The other one's transmission, which is Med-Ed. And then installed capacity, which is the PJM, which is, PJM is like the power coordinator for all Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland. They make sure that there is enough power plants out there to supply us power when it's 103 degrees or when it's minus 20 degrees. They make sure that there's enough generators out there online to supply, and they do it through auctions. So,
Did you say auctions?
yeah, it's an auction for power.
Okay.
So what that does is a third of our monthly bill is made up of that pass-through, which is the transmission and installed capacity. So those are 2 that do fluctuate with the borough monthly, and we're responsible for them. So, you know, we may have a steady power purchase with BP Power, but the other 2 parts of that bill will fluctuate. Second page.
And up until this point, they've been fairly steady.
Correct. Yeah, for years we've been really steady, and you'll be able to see the swings on some of these. So what they do is they look at 5 of our peaks. Actually, for everybody on the PJM system, if you buy power, when the PJM peaks, it's usually summertime, the hottest days, they will capture what everybody's load is at that time, and they'll average it out, and then that's what they multiply as far as your power load, your consumption. Next one.
So Greg, those peak hours are PGM's total region, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, it's not broken
Correct, the
down.
whole region. That's
the
not when
whole
Middletown peaks.
Megillah, okay.
Yeah, they look at their total transmission area.
Okay.
And usually it's between 4 and 6 in the evening. That's when people come home and, you know, turn the air conditioner up higher, start their ovens
Yeah.
and so forth,
Yeah.
turn TVs on,
Hey.
lights.
Greg, that's not like a multiplier, is it?
It is a multiplier, yes.
Oh,
So, I'll show you on some other slides here.
Next one, I just wanted to give you an idea. If you look at that, this is what the mixed energy looks like. You know how the PJM is buying it. Natural gas, of course, is one of your biggest suppliers because it's relatively abundant right now, and it's cleaner than coal. Renewables have increased. Coal is on the decline because of regulation. Nuclear was pretty flat there. No new nuclear online, but some was taking offline. Now they're looking at putting some nuclear plants back online.
Well, they're looking at TMI.
Correct.
Yeah, after they spent all the money to shut it down.
The next page really shows natural gas. It's just kind of reiterates that last page. Natural gas and how many thousands of megawatts natural gas produces in Pennsylvania. Coal, and then nuclear, hydro, and this is strictly Pennsylvania now, as far as what the PJM is putting online to give us electricity. Coal is actually considered more of a stable generating source than natural gas because coal is kept on site. They're stockpiles where natural gas is pipelines, and you can have pipeline issues. You can have supply issues with natural gas, and that's what they've seen in wintertime because of heat sources. They've seen a struggle to supply because there's not enough pipelines out there.
Oh, interesting.
There's a struggle to get natural gas out to a lot of these natural gas plants. So natural gas isn't always 100% reliable as far as that goes. But you can see our coal production has dropped 21% from 22 to 24. And then 45% of it's expected to retire because of regulation by 2030, which is right around the corner.
Right.
One of the other things I thought this was interesting, I want to just put it in there because you can see at one time United States never exported natural gas. Now there is a pipeline that was approved, and its only source is to go to Texas so they can export. So internally they're not improving pipelines for natural gas, but for the United States to use, but for export reasons they're approving.
Because they make more money offshoring it than they do selling it here.
And what that does is if you look, 11% is now exported, 17% by 2025. So it's sucking more than natural gas from our resources that we use for power plants. By 2032, they expect 45% of our natural gas to be exported to other countries. Correct. These are the little things people in the United States don't know, and
Greg and I were at 2 electric conferences, one last year and one this year, and at both conferences, week-long conferences, we heard testimony after testimony from different experts in the field that said that this federal government has no real energy policy. They just have mandates for green energy, but they don't have any real path to get there, and this is what's causing these. Pennsylvania only has 2 coal plants left that are producing power anymore.
In PA?
Yeah, and it's taken 3 to 4 years to get a permit to put a new generation facility on the system. So there you see, but our demand is increasing for electric power is increasing much faster than they're able to get supply in there. So that's driving the prices too. And some of the biggest energy users that are getting built pretty quickly are these huge mega data centers that are handling all the, the web traffic that's going on from anything you can think of. We're doing so much online now.
I think there might be something on that too on the load here.
Yeah, we'll probably get to that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yes, stop me anytime if you have questions on any of the slides. The next slide you'll see is it's the current natural gas storage levels, and this is kind of important, like when we decide to go out and purchase electricity, you don't want to do it, you know, in the spring following lower than level storage. The last 2 winters have been fairly easy, so if you look on their storages, has not been drastically affected for natural gas. So it didn't fluctuate prices too awful bad, but they were still, it takes one bad winter and your prices will be very volatile. Next page, this is very interesting. So you can see your red is your natural gas and blue is energy, and you can see how energy follows the price of natural gas. So as the price of natural gas goes up, and we've had I think 21 or 22, we had some real spikes in natural gas, even like around here UGI, you know, our prices increased pretty good with natural gas, but it also increases the electric, the price for power purchase. So you can see as it goes up, they were as high as $80 per megawatt in 22 when natural gas went to a little under $6. Right now, I think natural gas is hovering under $4. So $4 is keeping our power purchase out there, which is the spot market at around $50 a megawatt. And again, currently we are buying electricity, just so you know, for $35 a megawatt. So, you know, that purchase was made 2 years prior to when the contract actually started. We did it when, you know, we thought the time was right to strike.
Yeah,
so,
I remember.
You can see how since 20... I'd say about
midway through
2018, and that would have been 2019. We had those low years in 2019, and you know it did keep the price down around $30 a megawatt. But now you can see it's trading electricity's up around $50 a megawatt. Wow. And again, it follows natural gas. So what a lot of the issues are. The next thing is really that's just prices again. That's showing you about where the trading is for electric and anticipated trading for future years on the price. So $47 a megawatt day.
So this is interesting slide too, because it's showing that the load that they're forecasting is over 3,200 megawatts.
Did I skip a page? I missed a page.
Are you on page 50? Did you get to this one, Dave? Did you skip?
Did you skip ahead? Increase, that's fine. That's on 51.
Yep.
Can you go back to?
Yeah, sorry, go back.
One more.
We were on
Yeah, that one. So here is what the PJM and our pass-through prices, the installed capacity, auctioned at for starting in June of 25 to June of 26. It is a 5-time increase of what we've been paying for capacity. We were at $1.51 there for the last couple years. We did have one high year there at $4.27, but for the most part, there in 21, 22, we ate those increases. We didn't pass it on to the customer. But the last 2 years have been really easy on us as far as the capacity clearing, and all of a sudden PJM finds themselves not having enough capacity and not having to secure the increased amount of load in Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland. So what it does is it increases the price of the generator. And again, that's, when you look at that, we have a 15, I think we, on our 5 peaks, we averaged around 15 megawatts. And when you take 15 megawatts times that 821, it comes out to about $123,000. Now, that's a month. Originally, at that $1.53, that equaled $22,000 a month on our bill. So right there's, I didn't do the,
100,000.
It's roughly.
well, I know it's 100,000, but the percentage as far as it went up, I did not calculate
So
that.
what's that to a household?
I didn't get there yet.
Yeah, okay.
So, next page. The impact of the auction, like I said, is starting in June 2025, and they're predicting close to a 2.2 cent impact on electric rates.
Okay, so that's $250 a year for average house.
Correct.
$250?
Per average house.
So, a month or?
A
Yeah.
year.
So, alright, let me put it to you this way. I pay like $90.
It would have to go off of what you
That only
use.
comes you for 1
So
year.
everybody,
Double
you know,
next year.
you might
Watch it.
pay
Follow what
90,
he's saying. This is gonna
she
happen
might
every year.
pay $50. So, you know, hers might only go up a little bit, but it goes off of what you use. And what we're gonna do is probably put a little rate table together saying that, you know, a household that uses average 1,000 kilowatts. And they might be basing it off of 800 kilowatts. They didn't show it on this, but the average house that uses 1,000 kilowatts, 2.2 cents would be $225.
And
So-
this would go into effect in 2026 or 2025?
This would go into effect in the middle of 2025. That's when PJM starts their next cycle year,
Right,
So June.
June,
so it would affect the rates next year?
in June.
No, not today.
And this is kind of why we're going over what's happened in the market and what we did in our budget to kind of compensate for it on the budget side.
And so again, I wanna reiterate,
Subscribe with
this
them
is
again.
not a
It's fair.
revenue-based
They'll
raise, it is
build
purely
process like
pass
that for
through.
you.
So if it's $2.50, we're getting billed $2.50 and we're billing out $2.50.
Our
It's not a revenue generator.
our
It's
current
pure pass-through.
our current ordinance states that our electric rates are the cost of purchasing power plus the distribution cost, which is the cost for us to distribute the power, employees, trucks, and so forth. So that number is a constant, but unless we change, you know, just say we had more expenditures and we up our budget, then that would fluctuate. But as far as that's a steady rate. The pass-through is what fluctuates on our bill, and that's what gets passed on to the customer. So it's not something that council actually changes a rate with how that's set up. It automatically will do it in the future.
Angie, the reason we've been able to manage that fluctuation over the past 4 to 8 years is because of fluctuations like this.
Right.
And that combined with conservative budgeting on our revenue side and spending has been able to buffer that and pay those bills when they wiggle and wobble a little bit. But now we're talking about a big jump, which is
Yeah.
gonna make us adjust the budget.
Man, that's gonna be a heck of a jump.
So can I have the next slide? So what caused this in basic terms? They retired 6,523 megawatts of generation, and they only put 110 megawatts of new generation online. So when you have that, an increase in load on the PJM, it increased all the
So it's
costs.
like a swing like of what, 9,000 megawatts, what you're looking at? Is that 3,200 increased load forecast? I don't
That's
know what it is.
correct.
So if you retire 6,500 megawatts and are forecasting another 3,200 megawatts, you're in a deficit of 9,700 minus 110. You're in a deficit of a 9,600 megawatts.
Correct. And a little bit of background on what they do is, so if you're having a lot of coal that retired, when the PJM does this auction, they look at, okay, we're going to need this amount of electricity to supply. So all these generators are putting in for it, and some of them were expensive. Nuclear was expensive at the time. But what happens is the most expensive power source that gets accepted into their power purchase, everybody else is paid that amount. So even though coal only costs this much to generate, they're paid that amount of the highest. And when you start getting into your renewables, they're not cheap right now, and that's what's causing, you know, this big fluctuation on the market. It's something that the borough has nothing. Their hands are tied. This is a country.
This is happening throughout Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland.
Correct.
That's the PJM, but I'm sure it's happening in other places.
It is.
too.
It's happening all over, and what PJM is kind of actually following other units like MISO and New England and that so forth that do the same thing as PJM, and they all took the steep increase, and PJM kind of just followed suit. I think. Oh, the next slide. So not only is the capacity increasing, transmission costs. So transmission, the network integrated transmission service is a big chunk on our bills also. In fact, it's a little bit bigger than the capacity charges. And our current network integrated transition pass-through is approximately like $88,000 every month. And when I talk about that, and I talk about our pass-through, our total pass-through being about $114,000 a month, our bill is normally only $300-some thousand. I think I had it here, $380,000. Well, $114,000 of it was pass-through. That's a third of our bill is these PJM auctions and transmissions. And transmission rates, as you can see here, we're in the Med-Ed zone. Med-Ed is the orange. Med-Ed has been pretty steady, relatively steady, and relatively lower than most other transition areas, zones. But they are now doing a lot of upgrades to their system, and they are allowed to receive 100% reimbursements on the rates. So when you're allowed that, you can go out and replace, you know, thousands of miles of conductor, new towers, and so forth, and upgrade your system, which they should be doing. And we will see that on our increase, and you can see that our network transmission is increasing, slated to go up. Not super significantly, but significantly enough that it makes a percentage on our bills. So, in the end, the last slide I have for you is the investor-owned utility rates. If you can get one more. Oh no, that must not have taken. Do you have one more slide, the investor?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, probably sucked it in with the other one.
You don't have 58?
There it is. So here's your current investor-owned utility rates. Now our residential rate's 11.6 cents. our commercial rate's 10.6 cents. When you see their PPL is right now 16.2, MedEd's 2024, where are they at?
18.8.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
that's their current rate, and they are all slated to go up 2.5 cents in June, such as everybody else.
So we're showing that because when we have to adjust, we're adjusting from 11.6. We're already nearly 5 cents less than what I pay out in Lower Swedara Township per kilowatt hour.
So this is not a Middletown thing. This will be everybody will be going up proportionately, I would suspect. And how we handled this, because it's in a mid-year, we handled it just by we divided the number of months, that this is going to start from June through December, and it came out to, approximately half of that cost, and we put that on our power distribution purchase, and then we also added that as for the expense, and we added it as revenue to our customers. So it's a wash in the budget, but it does require
A 2.5 cent increase.
Yeah.
Residential and commercial rate increase.
So how much will it actually be as a kilowatt hour?
Well, so with that being said, I didn't want to get into it too much, but we are in contact with our consultants, and we are going to have them go over our rates. So we're prepared by June to have our rates coincide with the cost of service study that we did the last couple of years. We kind of just sat on that because really our rates have been steady. We're going to have them look at big commercial industrial,
Right.
like LaBrandy and so forth. So we need them to look at how it's going to impact them and how we need to solidify our rates, with the cost of service.
LaBrandy's back with us, or?
He's never left.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought LaBrandy went back to lower spot.
So,
Nope.
so with that,
Okay.
yeah, no, he did not. But with that said, we're also looking at what we can do to mitigate these issues.
Right.
One of the things is, I've been talking about this, behind the meter generation. The problem with us is we're landlocked here. I have nowhere to put a 28-acre solar farm or so forth. But we can look at battery storage, and we can look at peaking generators. So when they do go, okay, we think today's going to be a peak for the PJM. Greg, turn your generators on at, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and run them till 7. And if for every megawatt that I can reduce that number, will reduce our pass-through monthly charges. So you need consultants to look at, the payoff and the payback period, what it takes. But there's communities that have already done it through AMP Ohio, where they didn't pay a dime, and they did it through their power purchase. So after 7 years, they own the generators. So it is paying off in their communities, and they're mitigating some of their costs, but not all of them.
And that's something that you're talking to?
Our consultants, GDS, our engineers and consultants. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We need to
Gotcha.
talk.
I mean,
to
we're
our-
putting in a new substation. If you're going to do something like that, now's the time. Maybe they can drop them units, a couple of them units in there, or
Oh, yeah.
these things.
Why don't you?
Huh.
Looking at different places, maybe. We're in a tough predicament here because we have a lot of flood area. The
Right.
places where you don't have residential homes, you have flooding. So we'll figure something out. We're not sitting on it. Okay. just to let you know.
I'm just, for my own information, what's in the electric trust fund?
I don't have, I think like 11 or 12, and we had talked about that.
Could that be used for the generator?
Absolutely. And rather than giving people a one-time
Right.
benefit, I've always said, you could buy
Right.
generation out of that trust, and they'll get a 24-year benefit. And within that, what you do is, then you put back. You can put back money, okay, when this is done in 24 years, what's the next thing we gotta buy?
Can you find out which, or confirm
Yes,
that
I
amount?
will,
Double the
yeah, leave me, yep. So that's my presentation. Do you have anything on those, on how we purchase? And I hope I gave you just a little bit of understanding of what's involved in this process.
I have one question, Greg.
Yes.
You said something about, you don't have the land because we're landlocked. My question is just, if, I always mention that land across from the high school, if we had acquired that and you wanted to put in a solar field there, what do you think the approximate cost of putting a solar field in on that type of acreage is? That's one. And two, how many years does it take for you to then realize that benefit that could offset not only these problems, but just the rates in general for the residents?
Well, see, and that's what's great about this trust fund, because you're not looking at, when you put a project in, such as a solar farm, you have to look at your debt service. Well, there wouldn't be debt service if you use the trust fund. So you're gonna realize right away your benefits.
What is our electric trust fund balance?
That's what she asked. I don't know it off the hand, but, Sally will get us that number and give it.
Something tells me it's
Let
around
us
9
know
or 10
tomorrow.
million.
Yeah, it's
That's what
around
I
9 or
thought.
10 million.
Is that it? I thought it was like 11.
Well,
So-
it might be.
Okay.
It's right in that range somewhere.
Okay.
Now, has Jim Diamond ever comment? I remember this used to be, I won't even get into it. Prior councils used to use that all the time inappropriately. And then Jim Diamond, one time we asked, when can we use it? Can you use it for this circumstance? If there was, if that land across from the high school would have been available to purchase to do the solar farm, do we have an opinion legally that we could have used the trust fund to do the solar farm?
We did.
We have an opinion not about a solar farm, but we have an opinion about where the trust fund, when it could be used to offset power cost, and generation behind the meters offset the power cost.
So Greg,
When we looked at it for possibly the Spruce Street substation
Right.
rebuild, the analysis was, well, that's not behind, that's not generation behind the meter, and it was subsidiary to where the power comes in at Mill Street. Because the power comes in at Mill Street first, and then flows somehow to Spruce. So the answer was, if we were doing something at Spruce where it comes in, we could, but not, at Mill, but not at Spruce.
the reason I asked this is because a resident just texted me and said, why can't you use the electric trust fund to deal with this? And I kind of whispered to Sally, could we? And you said, it's a short-term fix and there's,
I don't recommend it.
right. But my question is this, had we had 24 acres, do you know, just give me a ballpark, do you know how much it would cost to put in a solar farm on 24 acres?
I do not have that.
Is it a 5 million project or a 50 million
yeah,
project?
I would bet 7 million maybe. I don't have the number. I'm just guesstimating.
Okay.
I really am. But that would produce 6 megs of,
24 acres?
yeah, I believe is about 6 megs of solar power.
And is
So you're offsetting 15 megs by 6, which is a decent amount.
right, and so Ken, the legal opinion that you had, is it only then, this is an ignorant question, but is the electric trust fund money only for the solar farm, or can you use it for the land that you also,
That's part of the project.
Yeah, if the land's gonna
Yeah.
be solar farm.
okay. We need to chat.
Yeah, we need to find land.
Well, can you use that land that we have?
You can
Hold
buy
on.
my house.
Don't say anything out in public.
There.
We're having an executive session. We're going into an executive session.
Potential land purchases.
But could you find out the amount tomorrow?
Yes. You won't
Let us know
forget what,
tomorrow. How much
Find
is in
out
there
tomorrow.
tomorrow?
Sure.
she's the one that has it, so,
I think it was around 10.
yeah, I just keep thinking back, boy, if we had that
Hmm.
whole 18 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well done.
that's why I said they abused that fund previously.
You know, even a gas generating plant. You could put a natural gas generation plant in. And again, what you're doing is you really don't have debt service because you had this block of money that could not be used for anything else.
That's right.
You know, what's
So-
old is new again, you know, 'cause we have a distribution system because many, many years ago, we generated our own power on the
Yeah.
Squire Creek at Huffer Park.
Oh,
So 24 acres
Yeah,
would
I
get
go-
you,
Oh,
I'm sorry, Greg, I'm not an electrician.
24 acres should get you about a 5 to 6 megs of solar.
Okay,
Depend if you have trackers on the,
got it.
if you have a tracking system, it does a lot better as far as how much. And it's not just the megawatts, I'm sorry.
No.
It's not just the megawatts that you're gonna save because, you know, when they're doing this, when they're getting your peaks, your 5 peaks in the summertime, what is it? It's sunny and hot as hell out. So your solar's just pushing out. It's not like it's a cloudy day or your solar's pushing out. But you're not just getting that benefit, you're getting that power from it too.
Right.
So, you know, you're getting so much power, which if you get into a power contract with a solar company right now, well, 3 years ago, it was about 7 cents a kilowatt to purchase power from solar. It really wasn't viable to do a power purchase contract with a solar company. But now, when you see,
Still not the
you know,
best, what I'm hearing,
this-
but it's better than it was.
it's what?
Not the best, but it's better than it was.
Correct.
But something like that would make an immediate impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How many years does it take to build a 24-acre solar field?
I think you can. It's how many years to get through all the internal.
Let's
stuff?
say we had land. How long would it take to build
A
it?
year, less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not long, and you get the AR credits. So usually you have to do a third party because then they can get the credits. We can't get the credits, but there's ways that you work that out, and you'd have to have a line to get it.
Well, that
Your
was my
subs-
next question. If they would have had the land across from the high school, how would we have transferred the power from there to here?
On that transmission line. I'd have just put a circuit out there to bring it back to the
Transmission lines
substation.
get to the substation.
Okay,
Just another circuit to get it back in.
okay. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. So, any more on the electric purchase? With that said, let's get into my budget.
I don't know if I want to hear this.
With my budget, under operating expenses, I only had one increase, that was, not because of taxes or insurance or healthcare going up or anything. It was under dues and subscriptions, and it was only $2,800, and it's for my, outage tracker. It was a free program for the last couple of years. I use it, all my outages, I gotta program all the information in, and then it keeps track of it for me. So now they charge for it, I included it in my budget.
Greg, are you looking at electric distribution right now?
Yeah, just the electric distribution. But I think the main thing we wanna talk about, if we can go to, I don't have your book, but let's go to, okay, on the electric distribution budget, that's fine, I have the pages. Under, 03442470. That's our power contract. So that's what we increased by $1 million. What we figured out to be and our, I have a thing from our consultants saying that 2.5 cents is a conservative. So we're playing it conservative. Doesn't mean it's going to be 2.5 cents, but that's what we put in. Increase in power purchasing. So we increased the power purchase by 2.5 cents for half of a year,
Right.
which comes to or an extra $1 million. Now next year it will be for a full year at whatever. So next year will be another
2026.
increase because we're not doing a half year.
2026.
It'll start being a full year at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then that was the only really increase that we've seen on the expense budget.
You did add an extra line, an additional lineman in your budget for distribution.
This year?
Yeah, assistant supervisor line.
Well, that's been in there, yeah.
Yeah, can I, before we go on to that, can I ask you one thing? Because you have another consultant, other than the one you just showed, document, that talked about this capacity increase. But it showed that they were forecasting that the capacity would increase even above what you're talking about in 25, 26, 27, like 4 years.
Correct.
That from the first one of this 2.5, in total, when you're at the end of the 4 years, it would rise, they're forecasting it would go to 6 cents. So 6 cents on top of the 11.6 we would be at about 18 cents a kilowatt hour in 4 years. Just with that pass-through.
Yeah,
But that's
they were
forecast.
still unsure about that, but still, I mean, I believe you're gonna see a lot of grumblings, and then I believe the state legislator's gonna get involved, and, you know, who's to say what's gonna happen? You get 3 Mile Island back online, what are you generating down there, how much on? 1,000 megawatts. 1,000 megawatts is more than what's going on now. You know, when you're talking 100 megawatts is new capacity for this year, at least they're getting an extra 1,000. So, but they're still relying on our green resources for power. It seems like they're hoping solar and windmills and stuff are going to take over, but you have to be careful with that.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, no,
because
and that's a good point. So I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news for many years. I just wanted to do the bearer of bad news
Well,
for this year.
I want to say because it gives some urgency to looking into behind the meter
Correct.
generation, because this
Oh,
may not be a
good point.
one-year, one-off thing.
Good point. So let's go to revenue projections 2025.
Where's that?
So what we did with revenue projections,
What, you say
What's the nu-
2025,
What's the number, Greg?
I don't
It's under
have it.
revenue, and it's under, if you go back to the electric fund, the first tab, here's revenue,
It's the white
debt,
tab, Rachel.
Yeah,
there's
No,
revenue.
thank
Rachel,
Hmm?
it's the white tab
I don't think
after the red. Oh.
or I would have done.
Oh, never mind then. My tab is white.
There's only like a page or two when they.
She's now on the pool, so thank you.
Yeah, it'll say 2025 electric fund revenue projections.
Right here. There you go.
Okay.
So again, since we increased the power purchase by 2.5 cents, we also looked at a half a year of our sales, and we based it off of my 2023 energy EIA report that I submitted. We break down what our sales are to commercial, industrial, and residential, and we took those numbers, took half of them, and then added the 2.5 cents for that. And what it does is it washes the budget as if we didn't have no increase in power purchase, and we didn't have no more revenue. You know, no increase in revenue. So it's a wash when it comes on the budget. And I'm going back to, I'm not saying power's gonna increase by, you know, our cost to our residents by 2.5 cents. Our professionals are gonna do a rate study and put those rates where they need to be. So, according to, you know, our cost of service study. And that's really how it should be, because you don't want commercial subsidizing residential, or you don't want your residential people subsidizing our industrial. You want them to pay their fair share of what.
But don't we have to check with the solicitor too yet to find out if we need to enact or make a motion for a rate change that coincides with adopting this budget this year? Are you
No, because that's already, it's
adopt
already
the budget
included in.
this year and then do the motion to change the electric next year?
You'll have to make a motion if we just did the pass-through and it was a straight pass-through and it only went up 2.5 cents on each one, and you didn't do any adjustments to those current commercial, industrial, residential, then it would just be a resolution, I think, for that pass-through. But if they're going to go through and actually manipulate the form, you know, manipulate the commercial, industrial might be different,
Right.
then that's going to be a change in the ordinance. So yes, that will be. That's why we got to get them on this quick, because that takes 2 months for us to do.
Okay.
So that will definitely be a change in the ordinance. But if you go down through, you can just see, you know, residential, commercial, and then industrial, the increases that we applied to those revenue balances.
Is that what that means, penalty? Penalty?
No, those are, the, penalty residential, commercial, and industrial. That's when, isn't that when we collect bad debt
Correct.
for, utilities?
It's a penalty.
So it's not, that's not a substantial revenue generator. What you need to look at is the first line of each. So
Oh, okay.
residential, commercial, industrial.
I see what you mean.
And then when you continue on, if there's no commercial or questions on that, only last thing I have really is the electric debt budget, and there's no decrease as far as transfers.
What is the transfer?
The same as last year, 525.
Yep.
I love that answer.
That is
I think we
good.
should be more excited
That
about
is,
that.
no, it's true.
That's
That is
great.
good.
I'm
That's
telling you,
great.
it is great.
That is good.
1.6 to 525.
That is
Isn't
good.
that something? That's
Yeah. Yeah.
again, you know, that transfer does, there's a purpose for that. We utilize the police department for traffic control.
Are
and-
you all right?
Yes.
Do you want some water?
No, I'm good. I have water.
And we utilize the highway department, you know, their manpower and their equipment.
Sure.
So,
Right.
there should be some kind of
Some
expense
towards-
for that,
yeah.
and that's what you're doing now.
Mhm.
So, okay.
I'm happy about it.
Is there any questions? And if you have any questions on my specific budget line items, like I said, they have not changed. I have not increased them. For the last 3 years, we've been trying to keep our budget steady. And where I could decrease, I would. Unfortunately, in this time of inflation, it is tough. It's very tough to keep prices
Yeah.
down, and especially with projects, more and more projects now moving through, we're seeing a lot more purchases on our end. So,
Thanks, Greg.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to stop by or call with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. On Now is the time of general public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? We will be going to executive session for a few minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, what am I doing? I'm not doing this right. I
Blue
can't
was
get a hold of
something.
the pages, my fingers are that dry, I gotta use lotion again. Okay,
Long day.
You can leave it here.
End of a long day.
say it there, okay.